Joining me now is Joe Sestak, Democratic representative from Pennsylvania, member of the Armed Services Committee, and a retired three-star admiral. Representative Sestak, nice to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Good to be with you, Alex.
You know, these military drills were planned well before Tuesday's incident, so on the heels of what happened this week, should the U.S. follow through with them?
Well, they actually moved them up a few days because this wasn't supposed to happen until a few days later, after we had done some exercise with Japan out there. I think the United States did it well to make sure that they moved a military force there, not so much to show just deterrence to North Korea, but also to ensure South Korea that we're standing with it. Let's show some restraint. On the other hand, while this is one step, the most important issue right now is how well are we working with China, who has the real influence, if any, but he does, with North Korea. That's the key to this. China wants to move into the international role of a rational actor in the international scene, but it's got an ally in North Korea that continues to do strange things. How well it helps move that to a less provocative stance is an indication if China really does want to move into the international arena as a rational player, particularly as other Asian nations watch it to see how closely they want to be working with China itself.
I'm looking at headlines from around the world, sir, that indicate North Korea suggests the U.S. participation in these military exercises is putting the Koreas on the brink of war. Do you agree with that?
No, I don't. This is normal talk by North Korea. However, everybody better keep in mind that there are small incidents like this that can suddenly blossom, like it did in World War I, into a major conflagration. And back in June 1950, North Korea went into South Korea. And that's why when you heard President Lee of South Korea say another strike by North Korea would mean he might have to strike bases of North Korea. This is why this movement of forces is as much, I believe, to restrain South Korea from unnecessary actions as it is to make sure who's really at fault here, North Korea, is told hold off, and as we work with China diplomatically. That's the key, is China.
Okay, diplomatically is one thing. What about militarily in terms of U.S. involvement? I've heard it said that you believe we should actually station more troops there in South Korea than we have, about 27,500 now. That
report that I saw in the paper was wrong. What I actually had pointed out was that because of Iraq, we have not been able to meet the timelines with our ground forces for the defense of South Korea. I wasn't advocating more forces there. I was pointing out that each year I have asked the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff or the Secretary of Defense in the Armed Services Committee, can our ground forces meet the timeline for South Korea? The answer is no, they cannot. The response, however, indicated that the Navy, our Air Force, can fill in the holes. Here's the issue. That tragic misadventure in Iraq has meant that for quite almost a decade, we've been doing nothing but counterinsurgency training. We don't do combined arms any longer with tanks and artillery. And so we have a force also that when they come home, 12 months later, they go back to Iraq or Afghanistan. So we can't meet the timeline of other war plans around the world. That has been my concern for a number of years. And so I wasn't advocating stationing more forces. I was making sure people understood that we may not be able to handle this war plan as well as we might want to.
Representative Sestak, I'm glad you're able to clear that up then on this broadcast. Very quickly, sir, as a retired three-star admiral, what's on the mind of those sailors on board the USS George Washington?
I commanded the USS George Washington Aircraft Carrier Battle Group. There's not a question that they are well trained and that they are making sure that the rules of engagement, if something happens at sea, that they know what the proper response is, that they don't overreact. This is going to be a very narrow area they're operating in the Yellow Sea. And that is where, as you well know, just last March, North Korea sank a South Korean warship. So the issue here is have a show of force, but don't be overly provocative. This is a delicate matter right now. I think we'll handle it well, but again, diplomacy has to prevail.
All right, Pennsylvania Democratic Representative Joe Sestak, thank you so much.
Thanks, Alex.